Christian or Not is a production of Revive Studios.
Ever since God told Adam to rule over the earth, there have always been brave people who, whether by clear reason or inner calling, have spent their money, time, and even risked their lives to discover the full shape of the world. Some tried to do this through theory and mathematical reasoning about the heavens and the earth. Others, not content with its classroom proofs, since even small errors can grow large in practice, added real experience and exploration. All of them deserve great praise, both in their own time and by later generations. If a land surveyor earns honor for carefully measuring a few estates whose borders were already known, how much more should we honor those who attempted to measure the whole earth, a task nearly impossible to complete? And there is no question of ownership here, as there is with private land, because the vast ocean belongs to God alone and is free for all humanity to use and explore. Therefore, the bold and successful voyage of that rare and worthy captain, Francis Drake, who was the first to plow a furrow around the entire globe, not only surpasses the ancient Argonauts, but even exceeds the achievement of the great navigator Magellan, in many ways outdoing his celebrated victory. But let future generations judge this. For now, it is enough to record the true story of Drake's voyage faithfully and without bias, using the honest accounts left by Drake's chief officers and other participants. These are not my words that I just spoke to you. They were written down by a man called Sir Francis Drake the Younger, a nephew of Sir Francis Drake, who we will be covering in today's Christian or Not. And this is like the foreword of a compendium or like a collection of all the accounts um, in a book called The World Encompassed by Sir Francis Drake. A book based on eyewitness reports of people that accompanied Sir Francis Drake on his circumnavigation of the world. However, if I would read to you now the Spanish poem La Dragontea, which I won't because my Spanish is not great, you would get an entirely different account about not a man, like almost a heroic story that we just heard, but a dragon, a beast of the seas, a sacrilegious pilot, a sacrilegious pirate, a threat to the Christian order, and how his inevitable death was just a divine act, how the dragon was slain and the Catholic faith persevered, how defiance of the Spanish Empire and the faith will lead to your inevitable downfall. So, there you have it, two very different points of views. But what is the real story of Francis Drake? Is there maybe a truth somewhere in the middle? The son of a Protestant pastor, a slave trader in his younger years, a hero or villain, a pirate or privateer. In his later years, an explorer, a captain, called a general. He was a mayor. Many, many titles. They just keep coming. But for today, we want to focus on just one thing. Was Sir Francis Drake Christian or not?
Welcome to Christian or Not. This is a show. We go through history. We talk about these amazing people, Sir Francis Drake or a Charlemagne, or we were covering all these different aspects of people: inventors, generals, explorers, and even pirates. And we're asking the question: not did they do great things, not did they impact history, not are we appreciated, not any of those things, but we are trying to understand, were they believers that followed Jesus Christ? Really, maybe another way we can ask the question: will they be in heaven or not? Will we see them again someday for those of us who believe in the Lord? And in the case of Francis Drake, I am really excited about this episode because I don't know about you, Mark, but I love pirates. Who doesn't? And it's really fun to look at this guy. I have to admit, I did not know even a scintilla of the stuff that we were going through today. And it was really cool to do the research and see all the research you would put into it as well. But we do want to make one little caveat here at the beginning. Mark and I are very aware that only, it says in scripture, only the Lord knows the heart. We do not know whether or not these people were Christian. But we do also know that it says we should test the fruits. We should look at the lives of the people around us to see, are they showing the marks of a Christian? God only knows what's going on in their heart, but we can look at our fruit and try to judge and understand to the best of our ability, using history as a guide, is this what a Christian would look like or not? We don't know for certain, but we are just making our best guess. And with that caveat out of the way, I'm excited. My name is Troy.
And my name is Mark, and I am also very excited about Francis Drake. I mean, we've been sort of pushing this one forward because we felt like
Yeah.
it deserved the script that we have right now. Like it took us some time. There were storms, there were things, in our way, and now we're ready. And I was writing most of this stuff like last night, and I even text you like, Troy, we're in trouble. Like I'm 10 pages in and I'm not even
Yeah.
halfway. Like this is gonna be like a Revived Thoughts deep dive
Yeah,
almost.
it's really a good sign when you're in your church history or any kind of history work and you're 18 pages in, links everywhere, and you still got a ways to go. And you're like, okay, we've got a story brewing here. And the thing is, I don't think we will even really truly scratch the surface of all the stuff this guy did. He was one of those larger than life people that I really found him fascinating. Honestly, I could have spent another week looking through his life and kind of poking around in there. Just also things that I learned about while doing this research. For example, and I'm not trying to spoil anything, but Sir Francis Drake will have, while he is privateering, a chaplain on board. And so I Googled, like, was that normal to have for pirates or anything of that nature to have a chaplain on board? No, pirates did not have chaplains on board. But apparently, English vessels, actually, like all of the larger merchant vessels and navy things, did have a chaplain on board. And so I was like, okay, very interesting. I wouldn't have known that. Like it was something, just these little things about life that you don't really think about anymore, but they would have been extremely important back then.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that in here, I know for sure, and it's gonna be great. And I hope you're gonna learn stuff from us. And we also would love for you to, just leave us a comment when we're going through his life, when we're discussing also like certain aspects, like, hey, how do we feel about this from a Christian perspective? If there's anything you feel like, hey, oh, you totally missed this story, or I mean, you totally misinterpret that, we love to hear from you. We're actually intending to do like comment
Yep.
episodes where we take your comments, and basically we're all learning here. We're
Yep.
all just, trying to learn some lessons. And I was actually saying this, texting this to Troy the other day as well, like, because, don't judge me for this. I'm missing a Bible study to be here today to do the podcast. It's a weekly Bible study, and sometimes I miss one. But I said, like, but I actually feel like I'm really learning things about my faith as well doing this podcast. So I hope that's the same for you listening, watching this. I hope you go along on this journey with us, because we're going on a journey. It's taking us around the entire world, and yeah, we're in for quite something here with Sir Francis Drake.
I don't think we can say any more about it. Let's dig in. Let's grab on and see his life, because I feel like it really doesn't take long before it just starts going.
It does. He just takes off. The train starts riding. It leaves the station, and it just keeps speeding up all the way throughout the story. And yeah, I mean, even a little spoiler alert, as we were preparing, Troy said, this might be the one we disagree on.
It
So
I think it will be.
yeah, so this is gonna be good. This is gonna be good. So without any further ado, Sir Francis Drake was not born as Sir, because that's not how it works. He was born Francis Drake in Tavistock, Devonshire, England. So we're back in the old country, as Troy would call it, right? Do you call it the old country still?
We definitely do not call it the
Okay,
old country.
okay, no.
Sometimes as a joke, because we don't live in America, I'll be like, "Ah, back in the old country," to my wife as a humorous quip because we
Okay,
don't live in America, but I definitely would never refer to England as the old country.
okay, that's good
Not
intel
since
from you.
1776, thank you very much.
Okay. 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 Sorry. Touching on other things here. We're already just, it was the first sentence of the biography and we're already gone.
But I do appreciate I definitely would not have known that was pronounced Devonshire. I would have looked at it as Devonshire, so that was some good clarifiers for me.
I, I'm just guessing here, but as a European, I have the moral high ground on
Yeah,
this.
exactly,
So,
100%.
okay, good. Let's go. So we're in Tavistock, Devonshire, in England. Around the year 1514, Sir Francis Drake, or Francis Drake at the time, is born to Edmund Drake, oldest of 12 children. And old man Edmund was a farmer and part-time preacher, or he was a part-time preacher and a farmer. Like some people emphasize one more than the other, different sources. And you're gonna hear us say different sources a lot, I
Yep.
think, this episode. There is a lot out here on Francis Drake, and it starts right away. Like right away, it starts with
Well,
like different stories.
two different groups of people wrote about Francis Drake at the same time, but one group of people saw him. I mean, no, the word terrorist probably is not a far off word as how the Spanish Catholics would have viewed him
Yes.
as history, whereas of course the English view him as this wonderful, David versus Goliath story. And so, yeah, they're both writing, and historians love to take both sides, even though I personally don't mind being a little more biased sometimes and
Yeah.
going, I'm not really sure what the Spanish Catholics would have to say about this that much. But so, yes, the one side is he's born from a normal preaching farmer family. And then the other side will be like he's born from the dragon because he is a dragon, which is okay to give the Spanish credit that when you mentioned the poem Dragon Tea, which again I thought was dragon tea, which sounds like a great delicious tea. But Drake's last name also means dragon. So, it
Yeah.
is kind of like a cool name. I can see why they gave him that nickname. It is kinda cool.
Yeah, it is. That is very true. So, um, we're in Tavistock, Devonshire still, and his dad is either farming or preaching, depending on the day. And this is a time in England, and Troy can tell you a lot more about this, about church history, but England is just being thrown back and forth between the Protestants and the Catholics. So we have King Henry VIII in 1534, that's 34, sorry. I know speak English. 1534, he splits up from Rome and he basically begins what will later become the Anglican Church. And in 1540, they're Protestants, but there's still Catholics around and they're mad. So the story is that Drake's family, Edmund Drake, was actually persecuted where they lived and then they fled to Plymouth. Or the story is that he was actually in trouble for robbery and assault, and that's why he fled the county that he was living in. Again, different sources, different stories. Either way, Francis ended up moving to Plymouth, and he was probably already there before his dad got in either in trouble, either by the Catholics or just by his own conduct. And now we get a very important part of the story enters in, and that is a family, the family of Francis, that was already living in Plymouth, called the Hawkins family. And well, Francis Drake grows up. Plymouth is by the sea. Like if you would see the map of England, you have like this sort of tip at the yeah. If you look at it from the top, like the left bottom part, that's where Plymouth is. It's on the channel, so if you can swim very well, you could swim to France. It's quite a ways there, but that's where he is. So English Channel, lots of trade going on. And Francis Drake, he gets involved. He starts working on boats. He's like on the water the whole time and he does really well. He does so well that at one point, the man that he's working for, his master, passes away and leaves him his own boat. So that's a pretty big deal, back then,
A
getting a
high
boat.
confidence mark there, like, saying like, "Hey, I see this future for you for
Yeah,
sure."
yeah. We don't know how the master passed away. If it was like the boat actually sank or something, and he got like a like he got a submarine. But no, he gets the boat and he just keeps working out at sea in the channel, the smaller waters for what's going to come later, because the Hawkins family, we mentioned before, he gets involved with them and mainly with a guy named John Hawkins. They become good friends, they become good business partners, and Drake gets involved into some bigger waters, some deeper oceans, and that is the Atlantic Ocean. Now, it's good to know the British or the English, sorry, I actually was very confused working on this, but by this time they were really only called the English. British comes way later. They're the English, they are late to the party, basically. Like Spain, Portugal, they're all the way in the Americas. They're, in the new country. They're really out there and just yeah, discovering everything, taking everything and England is late to the party. Like they just and by now Spain has set up sort of a monopoly. They even say like, "Hey, we're the only ones allowed to do this. We're the only ones allowed to bring people from Africa to the Americas, slave trading. We're the only ones allowed to do this. Anyone else not allowed. You can't get in. Like we got this covered and go away." Uh, Francis Drake and mainly his business partner, John Hawkins, they don't care. They get some boats together, they sail to West Africa, they work with the local kings. The local kings are very eager to get rid of their competitors, so Hawkins and Drake have the perfect solution for them. Let's take them to another continent, especially in those days. That would definitely take care of the problem.
Yep.
And even though the Spanish said like, "Hey, you can do this," I mean, who's gonna know? Like, there's no satellites, there's no phones, no one's gonna like, call back home. Hey, like, there's a guy here who says he has slaves and he's from England. Can we?
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen. So,
And the slaves, I mean, it's not this is obviously not a pretty part of the Vineyard story, but you have to understand where it began. Slaves did not live very long. Like, it was not uncommon for a lot of them to either not make the travel well or to not survive the extremely harsh
yeah,
conditions in the colonies. And so having somebody bring more and sell them to you, it helps replenish. Again, this is not a good way to look at human life. Obviously, everyone and we understand slavery is very bad, but they don't understand that. They don't really seem to see a problem with that.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, that's they get involved in this business, and this is actually the first time that Drake, together with this John Hawkins, makes it over the Atlantic. They sail to like the what we now call the Caribbean, and they called it the West Indies because they thought it was the other part of the East Indies that they found before. They were missing some pieces of the map still, but they called it the West Indies, and they bring all these people over. They make a lot of money, and they go back home. And actually, and this is an important detail, and the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, she's in on it. Like, she knows this is happening. She knows there's English people doing this slave trading, and she's actually like buying into the expeditions. She's supporting it, maybe not as public as would. If it would come out, it would not be good. Spanish would be angry, but at least on a hush hush, she is definitely supporting this because it is also sponsoring the state. Like, the state is getting a cut of the money that they're making. The second voyage that they make in 1568, and by now Francis Drake gets his own ship within the fleet, so he's rising through the ranks. They go to a place called San Juan de Ulua off the coast of Mexico to hopefully sell slaves. It does not work out. Actually, in another source, I didn't put in the script, but they actually sort of had to let go of the slaves without getting payment for them. So there's like, yeah, it didn't work out for some reason, but now they get into trouble with the Spanish. And what happens is that their fleet, like Hawkins's fleet, they just get destroyed. Like, they get in trouble. There's a fireboat, which is just literally a fireboat. You set a boat on fire and sail it into another boat.
I don't know how you do that. How do you sail that boat on fire? Like, does the guy who sails it, does he just die trying to get the boat to them? Do you just push it and hope the boat lands against their boat? Like, that is such an interesting aspect of warfare to me, and it comes up a couple times in the
Yeah.
story, and I just am like, I'm fascinated by the idea that there's somebody who's just sailing on a boat that's mostly on fire, like, we're gonna aim it for that spot, or again, you just push it off and go, "Well, that'll be great if it hits that other boat like I'm hoping it will."
I'm actually now picturing just a guy standing at, like, the big, you call it a wheel,
Yeah,
like
the steering wheel.
the wheel of the ship, but standing in like a bucket of water to like
Yeah,
to keep him safe
flames,
from the
exactly.
flames around. Or maybe, maybe you just set the front part of the ship on fire and then you
Ho
sail it into.
And then what do you yeah, so that's a real I'm sure there's a technical explanation. I'm sure that these naval people know how to do it because, again, it happens a couple different times in the story where
Yeah.
it's very effective and very damaging. I just personally don't know how you would do that.
Well, I am pretty sure it's a one-off thing. Like, it's, yeah, but
I don't think the good boat comes back and you get to try it again. Yeah.
yeah, just maybe there's like a rope at the end and you can just pull it back and then
Well,
push it
that one
back.
didn't quite burn the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a very fascinating part of the story to me. I the thing we oftentimes can be, C.S. Lewis called it chronological snobbery. Like, we can look back on the past and go, "Oh, these people are so backwards." And we're talking about slave trading. We're like, "Oh, that is very morally backwards."
Mm.
But then they do something like fire boats, and I don't know that any of us, if I took 100 random people today and said, "Make a fireboat, hit that boat across the ocean over there. Your lives depend on it." I don't think any of us would live. Like, I think we would all fail to do that because it's just such a completely unused skill that we no longer have. And it's just things like that that fascinate me.
I mean, let's be honest. If they put us on a boat that wasn't on fire, we probably wouldn't make it across the ocean either. So
Yeah,
it's not,
it's
yeah,
true.
it's
You know
a
what? That's
lost
a
art.
great point. A great point.
Yeah. Okay, well, there is fireboats, and it turns out really devastating for Hawkins. His ship gets fireboated, I guess. It's a verb now. And Drake sees this from his own vessel called the Judith, and he's like, mm-mm, I'm out. He does a 180. He sails back for England, and he's like, no, I'm not doing this. Um, John Hawkins, he thought like Drake thought for sure he's dead. Like who's gonna survive a fireboat? Apparently, but he survives. He makes his way back to England, and there is some, must have been some tough conversations happening there. But we do see later on in the story that they make amends, that they work together again later.
Yeah, they'll specifically work together to take down the Spanish Armada, which I thought was pretty
Yeah,
fascinating. And at one point, they like one of I think it's Francis Drake's actually ship will get in trouble, and it will be John Hawkins and another guy ride up on two boats that kind of like help get him out of the heavy fire, as it were. So they're that level of close again down the road.
yeah. So they make amends. Like that's very clear because otherwise Hawkins could have done the exact same thing later on, but not this time. Drake flees the scene. He makes it back home. And this is a very defining moment for Drake. So, this defeat by the Catholic Spaniards, he's like, this is never going to happen again. Like, he's a Protestant. And yeah, I mean, the Catholics, they're basically, the evil in the world. So, he is out for Spanish blood. As far as he's concerned, it's open season for anything Spanish. Like, he pretty much from now on will devote his life to hurting Spanish interests as much as he can.
And that like that can kind of sound vengeful or a little off track. But if I can, like, if I can maybe paint a little bit of a broader context to maybe explain it, the Spanish run the New World. The Spanish are running Africa. The Spanish are running, like, the Netherlands at this point. The Spanish are running everything from Mexico and California to Peru, and they aren't being kind to the people that they run. They are a brutal empire, at least from the perspective of England. Look, if you're a Spanish Catholic person, you might be like, that was our high point. Things were great. But from the perspective of an English person, it's the Inquisition for those people. We all know that, yeah, sure, some of the people like the Aztecs doing their human sacrifices, I'm not necessarily sad that they didn't make it, but we also know that like the Inquisition is in the New World. Things are going brutal. And in this moment, Francis Drake with his, sailing partners, they're just doing trade stuff. They haven't declared war on anybody as far as I can see, and suddenly they're the only survivors of this attack. He would have sailed all the way back to England assuming that, like, his best friend in the world or whatever was dead, and he finds out he did survive, but all the other guys didn't? So, I can see why that would be a real wake-up call to you where you're like, "These are not a friendly people you can get along with. They need to be stopped."
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. Oh, and we're gonna see how this works out in the story. We're only on page 2, I think. So this is gonna keep going for a little bit. He comes home from this failed expedition, but it does catch the attention of Queen Elizabeth I, who is queen at this time. She took over from her half sister Mary, who you may know by her other name called Bloody Mary. After Henry VIII, there was a guy called Edward VI who actually sort of reinforced the Protestant course that Henry put out. Then Mary came on the scene, and she was a Catholic, and she was not having it. She wanted to turn everything in England back to Catholicism, and nearly
She
300
nearly
people were burned at the
She
stake.
nearly succeeds. She killed a lot of wonderful, great people. The one off the top of my head that I'm thinking of is John Bradford, a fantastic preacher and man. But there were plenty of others who were also burned at the stake. And the thing is, too, this is going to become a reoccurring theme through the life of England's history, at least for the next 150 or so years, this deep-seated fear that, like, the Catholics will retake over England if we let them. Everything was, not peaceful, but going in one direction. Bloody Mary comes in, kills a bunch of people, tries to force it back into Catholicism, and even though Queen Elizabeth is now in charge, the fear that and I think actually in some ways a very justified fear based on the things that happened both with this Francis Drake story and other things, that there is like we have this country, but only if we can keep the Catholics from taking it back over.
Yeah, well, and talking about that, that's what's gonna happen now. Like that is the perfect backdrop actually for like the story that's going to happen now because Queen Elizabeth the first, she was like I said before, she already invested in these slave trading expeditions, and now as this has happened, she's like, Francis Drake, I'm going to need you to go back there and you need to get as much intel as you can on the Spanish in the New World. And I am going to need you to just make up for your failure. So, which, like subtext, make me my money back. So, Francis Drake in 1572 takes two small ships, crosses the Atlantic, and his goal is to find Spanish silver. And like we've been saying this, like there was so much I didn't know about any of these things that I was reading on and I was researching. And this is just one more thing. So the Spanish are already in the New World, already for like I think 40, 50 years, like really well established by now. And they are just taking so much valuables from there. So they're mining silver like in places like modern day Peru and those places, and they're walking it down to Panama, and from Panama they're shipping it either east back to Europe or west to like the Philippines to Asia. And the way they actually got their ships in was this was new, but I was like, of course, this makes so much sense. They would just build ships on the other side. So there was one guy who sailed across the entire continent, Ferdinand Magellan. He was the first guy to do a circumnavigation, or his crew was, because he died. I think it was in the Philippines. Actually, he was killed, so didn't make it all the way, but his crew did. So he was the first. Like the crew was the first to do a full lap of the Earth. But it was hard, so they figured it's way easier. We're already here. We just have our ships on one side and we go to the other side and build ships there and we just keep sailing. So that's how the Spanish are doing it, and they're making all the money. Like you just already said this, like they're just they're plucking it dry. Like they're really going at it. They're bringing all the valuables. They're really enormous amounts of valuables. And Francis Drake finds out, of course, because he's there. He's looking around. He sees this happening. He sees the boats going with loaded with silver and gold and everything. So he tries to take a town which is now still exists in Panama called Nombre de Dios, and they don't succeed, but they do get away with some of the loot. But then they find out, wait, a town is fortified, so that's kind of hard. There's a lot of people there. What we should do is hit the supply lines. So what they do is they uh, place an ambush. They go on foot, so they get off their ships, they anchor the ships, go on foot into Panama, and they ambush what is called the mule train. Mules are like donkeys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna assume it's just a whole row of donkeys with loaded with silver.
Or it's the people carrying it sometimes could be called a mule train too, maybe. But either way, I think you're probably right. That's actually the
Yep.
mules themselves. But either way, this honestly is so clever. Like when I read that part of the story, I was like, man, that is so smart. Instead of trying to like take it when it's in the vault in town, you're taking it while it's just moving through the jungle. And I really get the impression the Spanish didn't even like consider that this could
Yeah.
happen. Like it was unheard of that an English ship would just be like out there somewhere, possibly that
Yes.
you maybe thought, okay, some of the tribes here might get upset with us, but it just seemed like this took them so off guard because they just thought they were perfectly safe on that side of the world.
I feel that's actually true. Like even in this time, and maybe someone in the comments can correct us on this, but like 1570s, I feel like the Spanish were just doing their own thing. Like no one was really bothering them. Of course, there were a lot of wars going on in Europe. Like there were in many conflicts, and I think the Spanish were involved in almost all of them. But here in the New World, they were just having a field day.
It would be I think the only thing I can compare it to is it'd be like if you're a bank robber and you see an armored vehicle going by with all the windows down. Like it's like they just don't even consider that this
Yes.
could be a possibly dangerous spot for them in any way.
Yeah, so they don't see it coming, and Drake, they take everything. They come away with like tons of silver, more than they can carry. And now comes an interesting tidbit. They are rumored because they were being chased by the Spanish. They were kind of mad that their silver was taken, and there were soldiers there. Like it wasn't just like just civilians hanging out. Like there was a lot of military presence in the New World from the Spanish side. They chase him down, and Drake, they're just, it's too heavy. They have too much. They have too much silver, so they decide to bury it. And this is actually the first time that someone of a pirate nature
Mhm.
buries treasure. And this is actually what spawns the legend of pirates burying their treasure.
In
So
fact
that's kind of cool.
In fact, if what we saw was correct, it also he created a map too. So like this is like all of the stories of pirates and treasure maps originates from this probably actually real story of a pirate who actually made a treasure map to a real treasure, which I was like, "That's so cool." I thought for sure that was just, some fictional embellishment to make their story to make all the pirate stories so cool and interesting. It's actually fascinating to me that, like, one of the and he's not the original pirates. Pirates come all the way back to, like,
Yeah.
ancient empire days, but one of the real true, like, original legendary pirates of the Caribbean age actually started with a treasure map.
Yeah, so that is really cool. And the treasure has never been found,
So
as far as I could find it in all the available sources. So if you have some time on your hands and want to go to Panama, bring a shovel, bring some equipment, and you may find lots of silver. They didn't bury all the silver. They were able to bring quite a lot back to England, and yeah, this was, you know, great success for him.
the only okay, sorry, can I push okay, this is actually not a part of the story I thought I'd push back on, but I'm just thinking, you're being chased by Spanish soldiers. You can't carry the silver, but you have time to dig a hole and bury it. Like, I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just saying, huh, like, that feels odd.
Well, I mean,
And then the Spanish
yeah.
don't notice all these freshly dug holes, like, you know?
Come on, man. Let the
I
myth be a myth.
I like
Come
a good
on.
myth. I like a good legend. I want Drake's treasure to be real. But that's as you explained it, I'm like, I feel like if they're so close behind, you can't bother carrying it to the boat. You just don't have time to dig a hole and pat it down.
Maybe. Who's gonna know?
And then
Who's
draw
gonna
a
know?
mat.
Yeah. Yeah. And then draw a map like very detailed, like counting out the
Yeah.
steps and
Okay. Look,
everything.
I hope there's a treasure there. I do
Yes.
wonder, like that. Okay, moving on.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Anyway, maybe someone in the comments, who really
Somebody in the
studied
comments
Drake
is
can
probably gonna say like, "What a killjoy that was!" Like we were all on board with treasure, and why would you put it like that?
someone already booked their ticket to Panama with
Yeah,
the shovel in
with the
hands, like I'm ready, and now you're
thanks
just
a lot,
killed their
man.
dream.
Could
Come
have
on,
used that
Troy.
information 2 minutes before the Traveloka or whatever had gone through.
Oh man. Yeah. Anyway, while Francis Drake is in Panama, finding the mule train and finding his silver, something very pivotal happens as well, because they make it across what is called the isthmus. It was a new word for me, but it's apparently like a very like tiny connection between two greater like land masses. So the isthmus of Panama, he makes it across, and he is the first Englishman to lay eyes on the Pacific Ocean. He apparently, from the stories, he climbed to the top of a tree and he could see the enormous body of water, and he said, or he besought the Almighty God of his goodness to give him life and leave to sail once in an English ship in that sea. So that is his dream now. Like he's seen the other side, like, and that's now his new goal. Like he wants to be the first English guy to be there and bother the Spanish on that side of the world, because that is still his main deal. Uh, However, it's not going to happen at this travel because his boat is on the other side and he doesn't know the way at this point yet. So he goes back to England loaded with silver, and like he is now solid with the queen. Like this really helps his position. The queen is like, "Good job." But something quite unfortunate happens for Francis Drake, not for the world. But Spain and England have come to a truce. So he comes back. He's been, finding Spanish people, taking their silver, having a great time. Comes back home and finds out that, they're not fighting at this time. So that's a little bit disappointing for Drake. I can only imagine, because now he can't, leave right away and start bothering Spanish again. Because, and this is actually a good thing to explain, we've been calling him a pirate, and in many sources they keep calling him a pirate. Um, but what he actually was like legally in that time was what we call a privateer, because he would receive a letter from the English government, from the Queen, saying like, "Hey, I now legally allow you to steal stuff from the Spanish," which uh, the Spanish would probably like, yeah, no, we don't agree. We didn't sign this letter. But having that kind of letter actually makes you a privateer instead of a pirate. Pirates were considered more like, we're on our own side. We take from everyone. But privateers, like, they picked a side. So he's like a pirate on the English side of
And
things.
and
Yeah.
when he gets done taking his money, he's returning it to Queen Elizabeth and
Yeah.
England to give them their fair share because you're allowing me to be docked at home and not go to jail. I'm giving you your funds. I'm doing this for you,
Yeah.
which I think is an important part of this because at different points, especially in the next part of the story, he will get massive amounts of money in his hands. If he
Yes.
wanted to be rich beyond his wildest dreams, he could be, and he gives it away. You know what I'm saying? Like he
Yeah.
doesn't hold on to it. That's the big difference between him and a regular pirate because a regular pirate gets the amount of gold that Drake gets his hands on, and he's not handing it over to the government for tax purposes or anything. Like it's his, and it's not like again, it's not that he gives away some of it. He gives away the bulk of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, so good to make that distinction. And so, but now because there's a truce, of course, the queen won't give him like a new letter, and he can't go out and bother the Spanish at this time. And I wrote in my notes, this is pure, my imagination, because Philip II of Spain had reached a truce with Queen Elizabeth, and I wrote down maybe because he was busy with something else called the Dutch Revolt happening in
Is that an
in
important story to you?
and it's kind of like our foundational story. Like you have your Revolutionary War, we have our 80 years of revolting against the
So
Spanish,
for
and
you, it would then be
yeah.
like, how do you, when you mentioned earlier, how do you guys feel about America? Do I call you like King Philip's the old king to you? Is that how we'd put it for you guys?
Okay, we're gonna drift for a little bit. I'm sorry to everyone
We're gonna
listening.
be adrift at
Yeah,
sea.
we're gonna take a little side note here. This is very interesting actually because in our national anthem, which was written at that time, like we have one of the oldest written down national anthems still around, and it was written at that time. It's called Wilhelmus, and in the first verse, we actually sing out. So, our like, how do you call it? Like one of our like founders of the Netherlands, or like one of our like main guys of the time. His name is William of Orange. He's the first William of Orange, and we take like that's where the orange comes from for the Dutch and all those things. And he had a friend who wrote like sort of an anthem for the revolt, but it was interesting because um, how do I explain this without, showing that I didn't pay attention in history class? No, so what happens is he doesn't want to revolt necessarily against the Spanish, but he feels like it's very religiously motivated. So the Dutch have become Protestants, Spanish are still Catholics. They don't like it, but there's some stuff happens. But he's like, no, I still, Spanish king, you've always been so good to me, and I don't want, I'm very sad that we're fighting. So in our national anthem, there is a line, so where it says I am from German blood, so that's really interesting. So we sing like big sport event, all the Dutch people in their orange clothes. We sing we're from German blood, and we will always honor the King of Spain. That's like in our national anthem.
That's gonna be weird when you guys play like, a German or a Spanish team.
Yeah, yeah,
I'd be like, so why are you playing so hard then? Like, just
yeah.
give it to us.
That's yeah,
But that is
yeah.
really
That's
interesting.
so anyway. So Dutch Revolt. We'll cover it in some other episode or whatever. Maybe I'll get Troy to do like a Revived Thoughts deep dive on it sometime because there's very interesting things happening as well.
Yeah, we did an
Mhm.
episode on Revived Thoughts on Jacobus Arminius, and it covered a little
True,
hair,
true.
just a
Yeah,
little, a dish of it, and I was really fascinated by it. I think maybe I just missed it in my own history classes, but I think it's a history a lot of us who aren't from the Netherlands are not very familiar with the very important religious like war that happened in Europe for 80 years. That is
yeah.
obviously important to anybody who's from the Netherlands, but also it's actually just important for church history and understanding so much of what was going on at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I mean, if you've ever heard of the Synod of Dort, that is in the Netherlands, city in the Netherlands, and some important decisions were made then, and stuff put on paper. So anyway, that's enough drifting for now. This was happening at the same time, but we'll cover it some other time. With no legal ways of fighting Spaniards, Drake sees it's not the time to go back west and get more silver, and he falls off the radar for a little bit, but then he appears again working for a guy named the Earl of Essex, who is just one of the nobles in England. And back in the days, when you were a noble, you were also a military commander, pretty much always. And he takes part in something called the Rathlin Massacre. This is not a pretty story. In July
Any
1575.
story that has massacre in the name, they don't norm. It's normally not like a really fun time. They don't normally name, like, the
No.
Queen's Tea Party, like, the massacre in the dining hall or something.
Good point. Okay. Good point. Yeah. Okay. You know, let's just put it on the language barrier again. No,
Oh,
I can't play that card every
that
time, right?
guy.
No, I can't do that. The Rathlin massacre. This is very sad story, and it, in my opinion, doesn't look good on Drake. And I mean, I don't think this is going to be a very big discussion point between us. What happens is there's an island off the northern coast of Ulster, which is now in Northern Ireland, and there is a families of the Irish chieftains of the MacDonald clan have fled there. They were resisting the English. England wants to take Ireland. Ireland doesn't want to be taken, so there's a war, and a lot of people fled to this island. And the Earl of Essex sends two guys, Sir John Norris and Francis Drake, there to take the castle and just to subdue this clan, the MacDonald clan. They take the castle. Hundreds of civilians are in there. And after the defenders surrendered, the English troops kill everyone. They kill hundreds of people, mostly women and children. Drake was in charge of blocking off the island, making sure no reinforcements would come in and no one from the castle would come out. And as soon as sort of the Irish soldiers in the castle had surrendered, he and his guys, everyone goes in and they kill everyone. There's there's just no way around it. The Earl of Essex, he is like happy. This is from a letter that he himself wrote. The women and children and others that were found in the island were put to the sword. The soldiers have not spared any that were found. Sir John Norris and Master Drake have done their parts very well, and in all things have dutifully obeyed my direction. And now this is just me speaking for a little bit because it wasn't actually like I couldn't find it as quickly in the sources, but there was again a very clear religious aspect to it because the Irish were Catholic and the English were Protestant, and um, well, they didn't like Catholics so close. So there was more motive than just like we need more land, we need more. Like they were definitely a religious aspect here. And Drake does not like Catholics. We've established that by now, and yeah, it's just like I don't know what more to say about this story. It's in his story, so we got to tell it, and it's just a terrible story.
By far, to me, I think of all the parts of his story, I think this is the probably the most against him being a Christian moment, if I were to say it, like, this is the one where I go, "Whew, I don't know how you do that." The only way I can maybe try to justify understanding it in my head, and again, please don't hear this as I'm excusing it. I would hope that if I was given this order, I would say no. But the only thing I can think of is you're a soldier, you're sent to do a job by like the government of your country. The job is this. You didn't make the decision to kill these people. You are following the order at a time when I don't know how much a soldier can say no. Like, and that
Yeah.
doesn't, again, that doesn't mean that I think I would hope that I would still say no and say this is ridiculous for killing women and children. They serve neither any military threat nor this is blah blah blah, right? But at a time in Europe, I mean, finding people in Europe killing women and children in villages and stuff at this time period is not a hard thing to do. And I can only think that you're doing what you're told. You're not responsible for, you're not the one in your mind. Maybe you're saying, I'm not the one swinging the sword. I have to do what I'm told. And even if I didn't swing the sword, there would just be somebody else here swinging this sword. But like saying that, okay, I can say
Yeah.
that to myself. I still don't think that makes me feel any better. I don't
Yeah.
think that that excuses it necessarily. I would hope it actually doesn't excuse it, but that's in my mind trying to think of like, is there a way that a Christian can rationalize this? And I think that would be it, especially because back in those days, there is such a heightened respect and trust in following the king and the queen's orders that is just to me very, very, very foreign. I
Yeah.
don't understand that. To me, a king or queen tells me to do something immoral. It's very easy for me to say no because I don't live in a world where kings and queens make any difference. For starters, I'm an American. We don't have a king or queen. But even if we do, like even the countries that still do have kings or queens, they have no real like
Yeah.
you don't have to do what they say. We're talking about a time when you do have to do what they say, and they are seen as actual, real leading powers that matter, that the king, in a sense, is actually more important than you. So when the king does something bad, but you're doing it, you're an extension. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, and I think it's actually gonna come up more in this story later on, and actually, I think it will be a point where we'll probably have a bit of a talk about it because
Sure.
it's actually part that I struggle with in this story, and it's gonna come up. So, for now, let's continue with this story because now we really start to get a move on. It's now the year is now 1577.
Which he's about, I think, 37 at this point, just to kinda give us his age
Yeah,
here.
I think yeah, somewhere in his definitely in his 30s because yeah, where I'm okay. I'm not gonna do the math because then I can say because he died in the year such and such, and then
Yeah.
people are gonna be oh no, now we already know. I mean we're 500 years forward, so he's
He
dead.
is
Yeah,
dead.
he's dead, guys.
Sorry to
It's
let you know,
over.
if you
Yeah,
were hoping to meet him.
yeah, no, it's over. Um, 1577, Francis is chosen to lead an expedition on paper or officially, the objective is go to Alexandria, which is in Egypt, in the Mediterranean, and find favorable trade there. And that's the mission. And they go with 5 ships. And by the time they get to the point where they should take a left turn into the Mediterranean, they keep on sailing, and they do not go past Gibraltar and all those places and towards Alexandria, but they keep following the African coastline because their real plan is to cause maximum damage to the Spaniards with official approval from the Queen herself. He is allowed to benefit himself and the Queen as much as possible. And there's a quote here because the Queen said she would gladly be revenged on the King of Spain for diverse injuries that she had received. Drake is in, like he hears, maximum damage, Spaniards in one sentence. He's like, you got me. I'm in. That's what I want to be doing. So this was actually the first time that he got to meet the Queen face to face, as he got his orders here, and he's all in. Like he has now only one thing on his mind, and you will see how that's gonna work out. So there he goes. State-sponsored piracy, privateering, like we said before, bring riches to the Kingdom of England. So they keep traveling and then they reach the Brazilian coast. And now something happens that is going to be very interesting in the rest of the story as well. I keep saying that. Sorry, guys. It is just a fascinating story. There's going to be a lot of me saying, and now it gets interesting, and now it gets even more interesting, and now we're just reaching levels of interesting that we didn't think were possible on this podcast of Christian or not. But it's going to happen today. A mutiny happens. Like you can't have a good sea story with a potential mutiny. Let me put it in the right words because again, different sources, different stories, but Drake, like some of the men weren't in on the plan. So
Yep.
they thought we're going to Egypt, we're gonna have a good time going back and forth to Egypt, maybe like a 1 year ordeal, maybe even if it's that. But now suddenly they're, in the new world, and by now Drake has told them off the plans, and they're like, wait, what? What's going to happen? So there is some dissent
So
among
let
the
me
men.
ask you, Mark, do you really think that some of these guys didn't know? And that because you can say, well, yeah, of course they didn't know. Drake didn't tell them. And I guess they wouldn't have. But like, didn't they look around the boat and go, boy, we sure have a lot of cannonballs and guns to go visit Egypt
Well,
with?
I mean, just going into the Mediterranean, like you're now in Catholic
Yeah.
territories. Like that is Spain, that is France. You have Italy. Like
I
Rome
guess
itself
I
is
guess
there.
you are correct, like, you
So
would need to be I just feel like, man, sure did pack a lot of food for this trip to Egypt, like, it just feels to me like you come we the Francis Drake is taking us to Egypt, the side of the world he's never visited. Look,
yeah,
I'm not saying they didn't know, they probably didn't. All the accounts say they didn't. I just can't help but wonder how you didn't at least suspect that
yeah.
maybe this fun sea journey trip with a little trade partner in Egypt might have actually been a completely different voyage when you get on board the pirate ship full of cannonballs and guns with enough food to get you to the moon and you go, this looks normal.
Okay. I mean, we cannot say for sure.
Surely cannot. No.
What happens, at least people are unhappy. And Drake, he smells mutiny and he's like, nope, that's not going to happen here. Because he's been around the block, he's been to places, and he knows if there's one thing you don't want when you have like 80 dudes on a small ship, you don't want dissent. So actually, his whole fleet is 5 ships, 200 people. Like you don't want people working against you. Like that's not effective. And I mean, you have to realize, like, it's 200 people on 5 boats in the middle of the ocean, like, that's the world to you at that point, like, that's everyone that you really have to deal with because no one else can influence you, so you gotta, put the hammer down, and if you're, like, the captain of the fleet, you you gotta take action, so that is what Drake does.
Well, in any business venture, if you have 200 people going in one direction and one guy starts to try to lead the business in an opposite direction than what the
Yep.
CEO says, very likely he's going to get fired, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this isn't a hard, it's not like a super hard thing to imagine, but the problem is when you're 5 boats at sea, I mean, I guess it's supposed to get dropped off on an island, but there's really not a getting fired here. And anybody who's leading the mutiny or who's at least whispering the mutiny, it's not like they don't know what can happen.
Mm.
They're very aware that the consequences of what they're whispering and saying, if it goes south, it's their death. Like, I don't know. That's my thought. It's like
Well,
you knew what could happen if you did this.
I mean, someone's gonna get it.
Yep.
Like either it's the current captain or it's like the main opposition leader. Like you can't just be like, okay, well, you stay on that boat and I'll stay on this boat and we just don't talk anymore for the rest of the expedition. That's not gonna work out. So that's not what's gonna happen here. So they come to a place, and this is actually almost like kind of poetic by Drake, where someone we mentioned before, Ferdinand Magellan, had a mutiny of his own as he was circumnavigating the world, and they they took care of business as well. So Magellan killed the mutineers, and one of them was actually put on a cross. And it is said that they were like within like like they could see the cross, and this is where Drake is like, guys, stop the boat. We got to deal with an issue here, and they have a trial and they have an execution. And the name of the leader of the mutiny, or like the suspected mutiny, was a man called Thomas Doughty. He was accused of all sorts of things. Like if I would have kept reading, I would have probably found more things that he was suspected of, according to some sources. But at least it was like mutiny, dissent, witchcraft was among them, which is, you know, I feel, I mean, it's 16th century. If you're not being accused of witchcraft when someone's against you, you're just not doing it right.
We really don't understand witchcraft the same way sailors did in the 1500s, and the reason I say that is so when we did an episode on Revived Thoughts, a deep dive on the Salem witch trials, and I was just trying to get an understanding of, like, sources, primary documents that talk about witches, and I found a sailing, like, log from the 1630s, and it literally was just like, "I went to this port. I went to that port. I went to this port. I stopped because I realized I'd picked up a witch at this port and dropped her off on an island. I went to this port. I went to this," and you're just like, "Wait, what?" Like,
Yeah.
witches are
Can we go
so
back one
yeah,
sec?
like,
Yeah.
to like if I told you, like, "Yeah, I had a great time, we visited some friends, I picked up a witch, I had to drop her off somewhere," you'd be like, "Wait, that's the only part of the story I care about anymore."
Right.
So, like, we don't understand witches and witchcraft the same way that they do. It's such
Yeah.
to them, it's just a basic log entry that you wouldn't even think to elaborate on. But with that said, I don't know that Thomas is it Dowdy here? I don't think he's a witch.
No. I mean, yeah, we don't know. We weren't there, and it was actually really hard to find like the full complaint or full charge that was brought against him. But at least, yeah, Dowdy isn't going to make it. He gets executed. And there are two things I want to say about this. One is that a couple of sources actually said like this was actually kind of weird because Dowdy was, they call it a gentleman. He was just like someone not of the nobility. He wasn't the sir. He wasn't knighted, but he was like really like upper class kind of guy. And they had like a group of upper class people with them on the boats. It was just normal to bring a couple along.
Which that makes like, if they okay, that's the part where it's like, well, if they thought they were going to Egypt to trade, bringing some upper class, upper elite people would make sense. And they also make sense as some of the people that would have turned around and been like, "Wait, we're pirating off, what? Like, this is not what I signed up for." I could see how it and that really adds credibility to them not knowing. And I could see why this guy would have kind of been like, "Okay, I came to trade with Egypt. I wanted to see some pyramids and make some money. What on earth happened here?"
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good thing. But at least what is said here is Drake probably didn't even have like the legal authority to do this, like to do a trial to execute someone. But he does it anyway, and this is something that will come up later, and this sort of brings this whole thing. Actually, now that I think of it, maybe this is sort of the foundation or some of the origin stories of these laws. Like we know very well living abroad. Like when you're in an airplane, the pilot, he's like, he's the guy that makes the rules on the airplane. If something happens, he's the guy in charge. And this is what happens here on the boat as well. Like Drake says, like, hey, we're on the boats. There's not a English judge within a couple thousand miles from us. So I'm the guy setting the rules here. I'm the leader. I say this is how it is. If I want a trial, I will have a trial. If I want to have an execution, I will have an execution. So this sort of, for the first time, this sort of becomes more clear that this is the direction he's going, but that also later on the world will be going. Like in the captain is just the supreme commander of the fleet, and he makes the decisions. So that's what happens here. But at this time, um, this was not already like set into any legal things. So his authority is questioned for doing this. But yeah, I mean, who's going to stop him? He's out there. There's no one near him to stop him. And then another thing happens, and this is from the book called The World Encompassed, which I quoted from right at the start. And I'm just gonna read it because it just feels so random to me. So they have the trial, the verdict is out, Dowdy knows it's over, and then apparently Thomas Dowdy requested to have communion together with Francis Drake. And I'm gonna read the quote here from the book. They both received the communion together as two brethren in Christ, whom the frailty of the flesh had made to differ. After which, embracing each other, they took their leave as loving friends in perfect charity, and so with a humble quietness, he, that is Dowdy, laid his head to the block. I don't know what to think of this one.
Well, and I believe this is The World and Compass was written by Sir Francis Drake's nephew.
Yep.
And I will say, I hope it went that way. I hope that Sir Francis Drake's nephew got the story right. I don't want to say that he's wrong because you know what? He probably heard it from his uncle and it maybe. But boy, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, and putting the head on the block meant there was also an axe that went to the block and the head went off. And it
Yeah.
was actually, this was in the documentary that we both watched. They said, like, because he was a gentleman, beheading was actually like the nicer execution,
It
better
was.
than being hanged. So there goes Thomas Dowdy, and he will, or his name and his sort of legacy will come back in a little bit. But by now, two of the ships that they had brought with them, they were just supply ships, so they are abandoned. Like they've run out of the supplies, they don't need them anymore, and they keep going and they keep going south until they reach a sea strait called the Strait of Magellan, which is, if you look it up on a map, is actually before you like go really around South America. There's actually just like sort of a way in between the islands that are there. It is a dangerous place. There's winds coming from every single direction, and it's not an easy thing to go to. It takes them 16 days. They lose one of the three boats that they had, and the other boat gets sort of lost, gets separated, and it's like, yeah, we're going back. So he ends up in the Pacific Ocean. This is a great, success for Francis Drake. He besought the Lord, as we heard before in the quote, and now he's there. He's in the Pacific Ocean with just one ship, and I think by now he only has like 80 men left of the 200 that he set out with. So, yeah, they've lost some along the way, and they're in the
And
Pacific
and it's
Ocean.
wild to me that this is all of this journey is just to get him from England to the Pacific Ocean. He starts with 5 boats. He's down to 1 boat. He's less than half his men. He had to stop a mutiny. He's only just now arriving on like we do not really appreciate today just how incredibly and immensely difficult travel and stuff like that was back then. I mean, you can see on this side of it, yeah, this is why the Spanish ruled all of this because who else could really pull it off during that time?
Absolutely, yeah, and also just for time, like the time frame, this took a year, almost a year before they got there. So it's now August of 1578, and they're in the Pacific, and yeah, but how are they going to do what they want? How are they going to do maximum damage with only the one boat they have left? Well, leave that to Francis Drake. He is having the time of his life. This is me embellishing a little bit for a fun podcast, but he's going at it. You know who is not having the time of their lives? The Spanish on the Pacific coastline. They expected nothing. They did not see this coming, and we said this before. Like they just built the boats on this side. They're not like there's no fortresses. There's nothing really there on that side of the continent because there's no one else. There's no threat. And suddenly, who shows up? A guy with a personal vendetta against Spain and against the Catholics, and he is just ready. He goes from town to town. He takes pretty much everything that isn't nailed to the floor, and maybe even that. Like he is just looting um everything, and he just goes up the coast, like what is now like Peru. He gets to Panama, Mexico, and he um this is again where there's different sources because I saw some sources that said, but interestingly, there were no Spanish casualties. Like there was no really like outright fighting, people dying. But then other sources said, but they were burning churches, threatening priests, they were torturing captives to reveal hidden treasure. Again, like who's to say what was true? But at least what we know for sure was true. Francis Drake was just, stuffing his own boat with gold and jewels and everything that he could find from this side of the New World, from the Pacific side of the Spanish Empire here. Uh,
If you're a bank robber, you just robbed Fort Knox. I mean, this
yeah.
is the ultimate payload of a group of people. And I don't know if you saw this. So we have here, like, as he arrives at what is probably considered today California, he claims this land for England. It has a name Nova Albion, which I don't fully know
Yeah,
what
so
he
I
was
found it
doing.
out. So it's Latin, and Albion was actually the Latin name for England. So it's New England, basically.
Okay, so did you oh, that's interesting. So the original New England is actually
I
over on California, so there you go.
Yeah.
But did you read the ceremony that happened there? Because it's actually
Yes,
that is a
I did.
weird story.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way I read it, and you correct me if I get this wrong, he basically is, like, kind of claiming this land, but the tribes or native people there start to declare him as, like, a god. And
Yeah.
it's like almost like from the book of Acts where he's like, "No, no, no, I'm not a god." But he doesn't really know how to direct them. So he's like, "Don't worship me." And he like points at the sky and he like bows down and points to the sky. He's like, "You get
Yeah.
it? Like, you get it. That's
Yeah.
that's the god up there somewhere." And then he like leaves them with like I want to say like a picture of the Queen of England. He's like, "And I claim this land for England. Everything clear? Great."
Yep. Yeah. And he moves on,
And he was
basically.
and, like, it's did you guys get it that we understand. So, if we were trying to say Francis Drake the missionary, terrible. Missionary or not, not good. He did
No,
not understand
no.
what he was doing. I don't think that necessarily makes him, not a Christian by any stretch of the man. I think he thought he was doing a good job there. Um, if you don't know the language and you just have a bunch of people bowing down to you, I don't know what more you can do than be like this,
Yeah.
this. But I also don't think I'd set up a quick picture of Queen of England and be like, "This is her land," in case it was unclear.
Yeah. No, but it's an interesting story. I think there is some parts there in San Francisco that still carry his name, like a Drake Island or something, like
The
a Drake Bay, maybe. I don't know. Um, but yeah, he doesn't stay there, even though he claims it as England. I don't like. How do you substantiate that claim? Like, you go back home, and you're like, oh yeah, there's this place. Like, I can tell you where it is. Like, I could give you the directions, and it's like ours.
Yeah, it's ours now.
Yeah, it's like how do you?
And you understand, the natives bowed to me. It was a whole thing, and we cleared it up. I guess like America left the flag on the moon, so it's like that mean the entire moon is America's until another flag gets up there. I guess so, right? Like, I mean, what do you do?
There's a joke. Okay, showing my European side again. We make fun of the French sometimes. There's a joke like because I think because the radiation of the sun, like the American flag that they left up there, is now a white flag. So now the people think the French were there. That's
That's hilarious.
that's
Actually,
actually
that's a good one.
yeah. That's a joke we have. So sorry to the French listeners if we have any. Um, let's continue. Drake, before he actually gets to California, he has his biggest loot. He captures a ship called Nuestra Señora de la Concepción, which actually, I think if my Spanish is any good, means like Our Lady of the Conception, like so named after Mary. I can only assume. Very Catholic. And he takes it. He takes all the gold, and it's like worth millions and millions in today's money if you would translate it. So he's doing great. By July of 1579, so just take note, like he entered the Pacific August of 1578, and he leaves the Pacific, or he starts to cross the Pacific by 1579. So he spent a year Like he's a year, he's just going up and down the coast, looting the Spanish, and they're trying to chase him, but they can't. Like he's just the one ship, and like it's hard to find a
It's
ship in the ocean,
literally
actually.
legitimately just one ship. He's doing a great job, but you also have to give him credit. Like, I mean, how many other sailors could survive just going up and down the coast of a land they don't know? Like,
Yeah,
it is not a friendly territory. It is a completely different continent with completely different weather than what you're used to. And he not only survives, but he thrives over there. And then manages to pull off this next part, which is something not many people, no one basically has done. Even Magellan died doing what he's about to do after he's already spent a year, just messing around, like, just
yeah.
legitimately having goose on the Spanish for a while.
Yep. Yeah, so he continues. He reaches the Philippines. It takes them 68 days to cross the Pacific. Uh, quick side note, actually, I was reading about Magellan's expedition as well, and they had no idea what the world looked like. So by the time he got into the Pacific, they actually thought it would take them like 3 or 4 days to get to the Philippines
Oh, no.
by boat. It took them 3 or 4 months, and a
Yeah,
lot of people died. Like it was
makes
not
sense.
not a fun journey.
Oh,
But by now they knew that there was a route. They knew it was going to take him a while. So, and this is actually a good point you just made there, because Drake actually does get credit for keeping a lot of his crew alive. Like, in a little bit, he's going to make it home with 56 of his 80 people that he entered the Pacific with still alive. And like for those days, like today, if you go on a school trip, you say, "Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Principal, we left with 80
we
students."
we came back with 56. I think that's overall a success story. Les, what can I say? The tiger part of the zoo was pretty fascinating.
Yes, but in those days, it was a good score. Like, it was considered a good score. I think Magellan came back with, like, or he didn't even make it back.
Yeah, Magellan doesn't make it
Yeah,
back, and it
yeah,
really does feel unfair. Like, it does actually feel like it shouldn't be his name. Like we say, "Oh, Magellan first got across." It really feels like his first mate, the guy who or whoever it was who
yeah.
took over, who actually finished it, he's the guy who actually did it.
That is a good point. So we should rename the Magellan Strait to whoever that guy was.
Maybe he had a bad name, and that's why it was like, it's just like, ah, it's really confusing. Castigan on Manza or
Yeah.
something. He was like,
It's
"Ah,
just a PR. It's a
yeah,
PR thing.
it
Yeah.
is."
So, but so Drake does well. He does well in this, and they make it to the Philippines. Then they make it to the Maluku Islands, which is actually getting close to where we live. So this is kind of
Yay.
fun. He is in the Maluku Islands, modern day Indonesia. If you have ever seen a map of Indonesia, it's a little bit towards the east, northeast of Indonesia.
The way I explain
Um,
it to people in America, and I know this may sound maybe somebody in America is gonna be like very upset, but I say, that place in the game of Risk that you have to hold Australia, where you put all your soldiers, that's Indonesia.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's where he is. He hangs out with the king a little bit, does some trade, making friends along the way, and now this is okay. Let me say, I think now we're getting to the most interesting of interesting parts in the story. They like he's doing great on the open ocean. Like there's not a lot that can happen. You can hit a whale, maybe get caught in a storm. I don't know, but you see those coming. I can only assume. But now they are in Indonesia, the land of like 17,000 islands or more even, and there is reefs and islands and shallow waters everywhere, and they get stuck. And this brings a new character to the story, which is a man called Francis Fletcher, who is the chaplain on board of Francis Drake's
Which Drake
expedition.
hired. He wanted this guy on the boat with him. And I do think we need to take just 1 second to explain why it's so bad to get stuck, because we don't,
Yeah,
when we're driving down the road, we just stop and get gas. We run out of gas, we can, call somebody to get help. Back in those days, getting stuck is death. And your boat can't move, you can't get food, you're done.
yeah,
That's the end. Or at the best, you get off and now you're on that island till somebody else comes by, which in the middle of Indonesia, nobody else is coming by. And these are not friendly islands. Like
nope,
Hudson Taylor described hundreds of years later, passing by a very similar area, and his boat kept getting stuck. And the pilot or the captain, who didn't even believe in God, was basically like, "You're a missionary, start praying because we're gonna die." Because in at one point he was like, he went downstairs and prayed because the captain was so freaked out because he could see the natives on the island starting fires because the plan was once that boat of food gets over here, we're going to eat the people on that boat.
Ooh.
That's the kind of area that this boat is getting stuck in. So when we say he got stuck and this becomes a big deal, we need to understand it's not like, oh no, the tire's flat. It's, oh no, we might be seeing people making a big old barbecue over there, but we're the dinner.
Yeah, so and I think they are seeing this in this same way. They're like, we're in big, big trouble now. Like this is not good. Because Fletcher the chaplain, he goes up and he starts preaching. And he starts preaching that this is actually the wrath of God for unjustly executing Thomas Dowdy 2 years earlier on the Brazilian coast, still in the Atlantic. And he brings it back and he's like, "Hey, come on, guys, this is what happened. Our captain here, Francis Drake, well, he doesn't actually say it, like it's actually said like he will not directly accuse him, but he says as much in his sermon. I was looking for this sermon because I was thinking like if you ever want a fun
Okay.
Revive Thoughts episode, like this sermon
It would
would be
be
quite
would be quite
something.
a sermon. I don't feel like we could quite do it, but man, it would be certainly a fun bonus episode, right?
It
It's
would
like, hey,
be.
this is one for you.
Yeah, okay. Well, we couldn't find it. It's been lost to the ages, unfortunately, but there's excerpts out there that have been put in the World Encompassed. So we have some parts that I can quote for you. So he says, this is God's wrath for killing Dowdy or for executing him unjustly. And well, I'm gonna read some quotes here from the World Encompassed. Master Francis Fletcher, preacher, taking occasion by the example of Master Doughty his punishment to preach a sermon upon the place, did inveigh greatly against Sir Francis Drake, charging him with the crime of blood and with bringing of God's judgment upon the voyage. He took for his text, so this was like his sermon text, like, hey, I'm going to preach, whoso shedded man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. And he applied the same wholly and directly against the general, which is Francis Drake, as though he had been guilty of willful murder. The voice of God himself, the sword of the Lord against the whole company, was come against them, and a continual cross, which could not be taken from them, except the fault and cause thereof were removed from amongst them. So he's pretty much saying, like, hey guys, we're stuck because our captain over here executed a guy, so gotta get rid of him if we want to get unstuck. Um, and then it continues. Francis Fletcher's account praises Doughty's good qualities and repeats his protestations of innocence, and while not condemning Drake outright, leaves readers to draw their own conclusions on his conduct. And I mean, people that have now listened to like the give or take 1 hour that we're into this episode, they're gonna see that this is not gonna end well. This is not gonna be like, and then they took communion and everything was right in the world. Um, Drake is recorded standing up, actually drawing his gun or like his pistol, like
Yeah.
the one shot, pistol, and he says, "Francis Fletcher, I charge thee in the name of God, and as thou wilt answer at the dreadful day of judgment, to preach no more. Thou art the cause of this our present misfortune." And then he continues to read like the entire indictment of Thomas Doughty, which he had carried with him for 2 years. And then he does something new. He excommunicates Francis Fletcher. If there were doubts before if he was allowed to execute someone on his ship, there should definitely be some doubts whether or not he could actually excommunicate someone, which wasn't even a thing within the Protestant church, as
Although
far as I know.
although if you had to ask me, if I'm on the ship and I gotta choose between excommunication or execution,
This is the better
I'm
X.
probably gonna
Yeah.
choose, look, man, I don't think you have the authority to do that is not what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say, "Fair enough," "Fair enough."
Okay, okay.
Drats.
Yeah, okay. Good point. But this is so Drake, he is absolutely mad. He excommunicates Fletcher and I quote again from the World Encompassed. Good man, seek not thus to justify Dottie's lewd practices and unjust dealings by laying the fault and guilt upon me. But if thou thinkest that God has suffered this great trouble to come unto us for some great sin committed by us, that sin, no doubt, is the great fault that thou hast committed by this your undutiful behavior in seeking by your sermons to cast a scandal upon me, to the utter overthrow of the service and the voyage. I will leave thee to the great mercy of God, but from me you get no mercy.
So here's the thing. I feel very mixed on this. On the one hand, you are at sea. You are also, in a sense, a war vessel. You are literally being used to fight in military operations. And if you are in military operations and you have, I mean, who thinks that in the middle of World War II, if a chaplain got up and started preaching like, "Hey, we're being a little too rough on these guys," blah 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 blah, especially in a dire situation, your boat runs aground, the Japanese could be around, and you're literally in because they're not that far from the Philippines, which is Spanish territory. Do you really think that any general is going to let that guy give sermons preaching like this is all your fault? We're bad people. Of course not, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, though, if you're the chaplain, you sign up to go to Egypt. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you never agreed for any of this. And if you're like, well, look at how much money we made. And acknowledging that this is probably like, let's give him some credit and hope that he's a good chaplain who loves the
Yeah.
Lord. He didn't want the money. Like, he didn't come on this trip to make a bunch of money. He came to be a chaplain, maybe make some money, but he never signed up for any of this. So, how I feel really I do. It's like I really do understand exactly both perspectives. If I was that chaplain, I would also probably be pretty mad at Francis Drake. I don't know that I'd blame him for the wind not blowing, but again, superstitious times, they did kind of do that
Yeah.
kind of thing. On the flip side of it, if I'm Francis Drake, I don't know that I would deal with this chaplain in any other. I don't know that I have the power to excommunicate somebody, but I also would kind of understand like we're in a bad situation again. Maybe we can see some native fires getting ready. This is not the time to have somebody preaching hellfire and it's all our fault. Like this is not what the morale needs.
Yeah. And I see your point. I see your point. Drake is not done yet, though. He keeps going. So now comes the official, final words. Francis Fletcher, I do here excommunicate thee out of the church of God and the fellowship. I charge thee in the name of God that thou come not forth of thy cabin, nor come before the mast. For if thou dost, I will cause thee to be hanged. So he is excommunicated, and pretty much like if he gets out of his cabin and goes to the other part of the ship where he's not allowed, he will be executed after all. And then he is bound to the hatch cover or chained to the main hatch cover. And there is a sign put upon him, Francis Fletcher, the falsest knave that liveth. And my old
Great.
English isn't good, so I don't know how sick a burn that is or
Oh,
how.
I feel like it's got to be good. The falsest knave that liveth. I mean, I never King James myself, but if I saw somebody with a sign wrapped around that says falsest knave that liveth, I would think, oof, you got him pretty good
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So yeah, Fletcher out of the picture. Drake then grabs the Bible, he takes the communion chalice, and he performs the rest of the service, pretty much making himself not just the captain of the ship, but now also making himself the spiritual authority on the ship. So interesting things are happening. They continue their journey east because they do eventually get loose. And I actually read in one source that they did this because they threw overboard some of their cannons. Because, they had been fighting Spanish.
Mm,
They were done with that. They now just want to get home. So we're not, silver, gold, cannons.
see you,
Let's
Kansas.
get rid of the
Yep.
cannons. So he gets rid of the cannons and they continue their journey east. They actually make a stop in a town called Chirachap, which is on Java, which is
It's
on
about
our
like
island.
what 2.5 to 3 hours away from us.
I think it's actually 4-ish, but it's like on the south
Well,
coast.
okay.
Like it's
We should
close
go
enough.
visit and go be like, hey, did you guys know resting stop of Sir Francis Drake over here, everybody? Where are we gonna find the museum?
Yeah,
Probably
we can try. We can
we
try.
we could I don't know that they would. We should have recorded this episode from there, you know? Oh,
Missed opportunity.
well, hey.
Well, let's just call it a day and just continue there. No, we're not. We're gonna continue because uh, Francis Drake makes it home. 56 of his men still alive, which, like we said, is a good score for the time. And Queen Elizabeth is still in charge. Like, you're gone for 3 years. You could come back and there could be a Catholic king or something. Like, everything could be different.
Yep.
Luckily for Drake, no, Queen Elizabeth is there. and he is happy.
You're gone
She
for
is
3 years.
happy.
Queen Elizabeth might be Catholic. I mean, the way things go back then, like, it
Yeah,
really could be a different world.
that is true. That is true. That's actually very interesting. Like, imagine you're like looting and raiding, the Pacific, and you're
You
taking the
come
Spanish
back, she's
every.
married to the Spanish king and, like, with the prince on the way. I mean, like, it sounds wild, but that's certainly not outside of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, no, I think that is actually very true. But that's not what happens. She's there, and he comes, and he is just set. Like, his fortune is made, his fame is made. He has circumnavigated the world. He's brought back enormous amounts of loot. He has brought like a special jewel for the queen, and the queen actually makes like a special diamond for him called the Drake diamond. You can look it up. It's like a very famous thing, and you see it from now on in his like picture or paintings. You will see him wearing like a fancy necklace with a diamond on it. And as a sort of reward, he gets knighted by the queen, and he becomes the mayor of Plymouth. So, recall for those that were with us an hour ago, um, Plymouth was where he lived, where he started the journey, and now he's the mayor of the place. And he actually does really he does a good job. He does a good job of being the mayor of Plymouth. He improves like the water situation. There's a whole thing that he actually used for like 300 years to have like a good fresh water supply in Plymouth. So yeah, good job, Francis Drake.
I do wanna make a
Uh,
clarifier. If you Google Drake diamond, it will bring up Drake the rapper wearing a diamond, so let's just make sure you put a Francis in front of that to
okay,
for all of our Googlers out there
yeah,
or people who still yeah, just wanted to throw that. It's not extremely helpful,
okay,
but it might be.
yeah. So good correction on me. It's called the Drake Jewel.
Okay.
Sorry, that is my bad. This is as live doing comments, like we're even commenting on
There we
ourselves,
go.
doing live
Oh, yeah, beautiful.
corrections.
Much prettier and quite frankly, a lot better than what Drake the rapper was wearing, so I think personally that one I would rather have this one, the Drake Jewel.
Okay, the Drake Jewel. Sorry for those that started Googling as soon as I mentioned it, and now only are now getting the rectification of our mistake. We apologize. He's the mayor of Plymouth. He's doing a good job. But again, different sources, different opinions. It it from most accounts, the nobility isn't super happy with Drake. Like he's like a commoner who is he's a pirate. He's looting. He hasn't come by his wealth in honest ways. Which I mean, if we're going to be judging by that standard, who really did in that time? But we don't know. Um, but they don't like him. He even has to like get like a fancy house for himself called the Buckland Abbey, through like an intermediary because like the noble people that were owning the house wouldn't sell it to him outright. So he's being shunned a little bit, but the queen likes him. So he's in with the queen, so that's good. But the rest of the nobility, a little bit like split on Francis Drake. But I mean, the queen is on his side, so that's all that matters. And in the year 1585, he gets 25 ships to once more do as much damage as possible, is what I read in one quote, to the Spanish colonies in the Americas. So he goes across the ocean again. He crosses the Atlantic, and he goes to actually first to the Cape Verde Islands, which are off the coast of Africa. Tries to take some cities there or plunder things, and he does. And he crosses over. He plunders Cartagena, which is in Colombia, and then he plunders a place called St. Augustine in
Yeah.
Florida, which is
I grew up
close, right?
down no, like, I grew up down the road from St. Augustine.
That is so cool.
So, Jacksonville is next door to St. Augustine, and officially the town I grew up in, like, literally got, like, incorporated while I was living there. So we'd go down to the St. Augustine fort, super cool fort. It's, like, 500 years old, which to America, it's, like, the oldest standing thing in America, so that's pretty rad. And so I enjoyed that area. And I actually I do feel like I have some vague, like, memory in the back of my head, way back into my head of like them being like Francis Drake the pirate came through here and stuff
Yeah.
like that because they were always trying to incorporate pirates and stories. But the pirate story that actually stands out in my head is the Huguenots tried to live over like when they fled France, they tried to set up a fort over in Jacksonville, which again, right next to St. Augustine. The Catholics saw that and went and burnt down their fort, killed everybody except for one guy who got away. And that one guy who got away ended up becoming a pirate, became like a really solid pirate, came back and burnt like one of the like other forts of St. Augustine down as like revenge, basically. So pretty cool. I mean, weird story, but pretty cool there. And again,
I'm just hearing other episode ideas. Like,
Yeah.
we gotta cover this guy as
That's the thing.
well.
There's not a
Yeah.
lot more to it than that. I just
Okay.
really think that story is pretty cool, and I was like, wow, what a fun twist. You thought you got him, but like 10 years later, he shows up and is like, take that.
Yeah.
So I was excited when we were doing the research, and I was like, Saint Augustine gets a mention, and you'll
Yeah.
notice it's Saint Augustine, not Saint Augustine.
Is that a thing?
Oh yeah, in America, and I think it comes from Britain, where a lot of them will say Augustine instead of Augustine. But I'm a
That
firm Augustine
that makes
person.
yeah, sorry. I mean, I would know him like in Dutch we would say Augustinus. So that's already different. Like we keep the us in there like the more Latin name.
I can make a whole
So
case for it. We don't call him Constantine. We don't call him,
yeah.
it's Augustine, it's Constantine, like Valentine is a little weird. I give you that. But then again, it's really like Valentine, but nobody's calling him Valentin. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know where they got off on, but I did do, this comes up on Revived Thoughts a lot because Augustine has been on there featured a lot. And we did do like a whole Google research on it. And it is like, I think the British are the ones who came up with the Augustine, and it's the American way is more Augustine. So.
Okay, well, I'm on the American side then for Augustine. The same with Saint Augustine, where Francis Drake was. Uh, Apparently, probably trying to destroy the pretty cool fort that you saw. He evidently didn't succeed, but he still looted the city and goes back, brings more wealth to the English. And now we get to a part of the story that I know Troy is really excited about
I am.
because we both did research, but for some reason we ended up reading different sources and I wrote most of the script, but then Troy today like was really digging in as well. And he's like, but that's the one I want to talk about. So we're gonna
Yeah.
talk about the Spanish Armada.
Look, I'm not gonna like just play by play what happens here. Like, I'm not a fleet naval expert, and I don't even know how I would do that on a video podcast slash podcast. Like, if you're listening to this at the gym or on your travels or in a walk, which is where I would listen to a good podcast, doing the dishes. Me painting a naval picture is not gonna matter. Right? And the boat went left and then right and then port side and then starboard. You can't see that on screen. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
But what I can say is this: the Spanish were given permission by the Pope to take over England. Like, legitimately, hey, England's in rebellion against the Catholic Church. Go take the thing that Queen Elizabeth and all of the English are secretly fearful of. They have straight permission to go do this now. You can do this, and they gather something like 100 plus boats to go do this. And the plan is to meet with the Duke of Parma, which is in Flanders. He's also Catholic, and with these two armies combined, they'll cross the English Channel, land, and they had mapped it out. They believed it would take 8 days to walk to London, conquer London, and once you conquered London and made London Catholic, it may take time, but it would just be time. Eventually, England would fall. Now, would that actually happen? Would the English rally and overthrow the Spanish Catholic attempt? Probably, but it would certainly be a battle. It would certainly change history, and England would be getting dragged into these same giant conflicts that, over in Germany, the 40 Years' War is happening. Over in the Netherlands, the
Yep.
80-year revolt is happening. Well, England has kind of keeps their powder clean. They kind of manage to survive and not get directly involved in a land war where their peasants are getting killed because of the English Channel. But this was the attempt by the Catholic Church and by Spain to undo that. Well, their boats are ready. And right as they're getting ready to take off, Francis Drake, with his little privateer group, comes up, uses these fireboats, just damages 30 of the 100 ships, wipes them out, and goes along his way, destroys a few spots across Spain, and heads on out. Hey, if you're Francis Drake, whose life goal is to cause damage to the Spanish, this is your ultimate gleeful moment. You're sinking Spanish boats right outside of Spain that were meant to harm England.
And he even gives it a name. So it has been named Singeing the King of Spain's Beard.
Yeah,
So he's like burning the beard of the King of
yeah.
Spain. Like that's
This
great.
is his ultimate payback for what happened to all his men all those many decades ago. Like, this is the moment he's been waiting for, and this absolutely messes everything up. So now the Duke, who had that army waiting over in Flanders to cross with them, he doesn't know you can't communicate well because France is in between you. And so, like, messages are going very slowly, but he now has to wait with his army to cross over England later. The king has to rebuild boats and get things ready. It takes another year before the Spanish Armada is ready to try this again. Well, again, the English now know they're doing this. They've been building up in preparation,
Yep.
but something you and I wouldn't think about, the food supplies that they had prepared all went bad. So then they had to completely reset the food supplies. All these soldiers have been waiting there for a year. Well, a plague kind of thing starts going around, and a bunch of them get sick and start dying. They were all ready a year ago, but after a full year of waiting, they try again, and when they try again, Sir Francis Drake and a couple other guys, one of them being, Hawkins, they come together and they fight this big battle. The Spanish Armada tries to meet up with the Duke of Parma, but this guy is like, "I'm not putting any of my men on the boat until I'm sure you're here." Well, at that point, when they're here and they're like, "Let's come together to cross the English Channel," the Duke of Parma's men aren't ready, so then by the time they are ready, the Spanish fleet gets kind of pushed off into the North Sea by the currents and winds there. Nobody's prepared. Everything's disorganized. Look, that might have happened even if Francis Drake hadn't got involved, but it was very clear everything was organized the first time. And it really seems like Francis Drake's burning of their ships just completely messed everything up. Would they have been able to succeed landing and getting all their soldiers and taking over England? It's a long shot. But also, they had a plan. They had the manpower. It would have been a really tough battle. And we'll never know because Drake gets in there and completely messes everything up. And then when the actual armada does show up a year later, he and his these boats do the job that needs to be done. They keep them from landing, they keep them from meeting up, they keep them from forming the force. The Spanish Armada will be forced to go all the way around England and Ireland to come back to Spain, and they lose devastating numbers of people, not because they fight their way there, but because they're kind of being chased by the English while they go. They can't land, they can't resupply. People are sick, and they end up losing, I think, far more people to storms and a lack of food and the sicknesses that are going around than they ever did in battle. But it's just a complete defeat on their side.
Yep.
Now, the flip side, after that, the Queen of England does give Francis Drake permission to kind of have his own. They call it the Counter Armada, where he sails down to England or to Spain. Unlike in the case of the Spanish, he does land, but him and his armies, we won't go into like a full detail here because to be honest, I don't fully understand what they were doing. But they wander all over the place. They don't manage to take like any of the towns they set out for. They keep getting run around. It just they are not able to do a good job back. So unlike the Spanish, they do land, but it's not successful. Nobody considered like and actually it's kind of interesting because he didn't have the money to do this. So he had everybody put an investment in, almost like a stock company or like a gamble. Like he had like the Queen of England put 20,000 pounds in and like six ships in and this group, and they're all investing basically. Like it ended up being 80,000 pounds of investment between the Queen of England and some different lords and nobles and businessmen. And when he comes back, the reward for their investment is 30,000 pounds. And that's not making
That's
your
rough.
money back. For every
Yep.
$2 you put in, you're getting $1 back. That's not good. And the thing is, it's also just weird that this is being talked about this way. Like, we're talking about raiding houses and villages and killing people as an investment. And like,
Yeah.
when am I going to get my money back on this? So the Counter Armada is not his shining moment, but it really doesn't matter in my opinion because the destruction of the original Armada is so sound and such a perfect victory for England that you don't really need to win the second one as much because at this point you already did what you needed to do.
Yeah, that is true. It is also an interesting thing because they actually sort of like tried to kick Spain while they were down.
Yeah.
Like they were trying to find the boats that were being repaired and just like destroy them once and for all, like beyond repair. And it does feel like a bit of an overreach. Like it
It
feels like
was.
they didn't need to do that. And even at one point, Drake actually gets so frustrated, it seems like with just not being successful in this, that they do decide to just burn a random town to the ground,
Yeah.
losing hundreds of people along the way somehow because this wasn't even like a military town, but somehow like it still goes so
So
bad or
kind
just
of
people,
well, I looked at that too, and from my perspective, it just seemed like the town they wanted to take was empty-ish. Like they wanted to
mm,
raid and loot it. They thought there'd be stuff there. Nobody's there. Everyone ran away. And so it's like they set it on fire just kind of out of frustration. Well, you set a giant bonfire while all these Spanish soldiers are combing the countryside looking for you. Now they know where
yep,
you are. And that's kind of what I felt like. I'm like, way to like signal, we're over here and we're angry.
yep. So it doesn't go well, like we said, like the investment isn't made back, and the estimated casualties range between 8,000 to as much as 20,000 dead for what was supposed to be like a very victorious moment of, like putting the final nail in the coffin of this in the coffin of the Spanish and just really their whole armada. They like after this, they will never consider taking over England again, and it just does not go well. Drake actually gets accused of mishandling his command. He gets away with it, but his reputation is bruised. He is it's hard, and he does not receive another command until 1595. So by now he is 55-ish, probably. And then once more he receives a command. The queen once more trusts him with ships. But the story starts to fizzle out a little bit. Like as much as like the heroics that we've heard about and the just crazy stories that we've heard, it yeah, it doesn't have the heroic ending that it might deserve, but it has the very realistic ending. Um, that is actually very common for the time because they cross the Atlantic Ocean once more, and they try to take San Juan on Puerto Rico. They don't succeed. They try to actually dock their ships and then go overland to the city of Panama, which is on the Pacific side. Doesn't succeed. Um, and then while they're on a boat just off the coast of Panama, Francis Drake dies of dysentery.
Yep.
And it's anticlimactic in a way, not to the Spanish. Like they're seeing just, the hand of God striking down at the dragon. They're like, there you have it. He was opposing the Catholics and now he died of dysentery. Like it's everything is right in the world.
Which is the thing, by
Um
the way, they do think some back in those days, the Catholic Church did believe, like, or at least they put out there, if you die in a painful, terrible way, it was a sign that God wasn't with you. So, for example, when Martin Luther died, they had to have like a bunch of witnesses sitting around him, acknowledging that, like, because he kind of died as an old man, like he didn't die painfully, he didn't cry out, "I was wrong, Pope saved me," or anything like that. Like they had several witnesses that was like he died a normal old man death. Check. Like this wasn't a sign of God's wrath. So then flash forward 40 years, 50 years, and Francis Drake dies of painful disease out in the middle of the, they're definitely going to write that down as like, aha, we knew you were on our side and God proved it with your death.
So that's it. He is put in his full armor, and they put him in a lead coffin, which you're thinking like that's weird. No, not if you want to be buried at sea. So they drop him into the ocean somewhere off the coast of Panama. People are looking for him actively, still to this day. Haven't found the coffin yet. Um, and that's it. That's the life of Francis Drake. Like we started with, like hero, villain, pirate, privateer. Like you've
Mayor.
seen this, yeah, mayor, like successful armada destroyer, failure in actually then destroying the armada
The
again.
problem was he was on
It's
land. He seemed like he always did better when he was in a boat. Like
that is
every
actually true.
story
That
where
is
he
true.
does
Yeah.
well, he's on a boat. Every story where he's on land, he's like burying treasure while being chased or running, through Spain, burning things. But put him
Yeah.
on a boat and he's doing a great job.
That is probably true. Um, but it just leaves one great question to answer, and this is a long one already, and I'm enjoying it, so we're just gonna keep
Okay,
going.
good.
So, was Sir Francis Drake a Christian or not? Okay, Sir Francis Drake. We've heard the bio. We've heard his story. It's been a wild ride so far, Troy. But now I
I
think
feel like I've gone around the globe through this
yes, that
story.
is true, and it's gonna get a little bit wilder still. Talking about the Christianity of Sir Francis Drake. Just we're gonna go over this quick because we know we've been keeping you waiting very long for like the climax of this episode. Like it's called Christian or not, and so far it's just been history, and people are like, well, when's the Christian part coming? But if you don't like history, you probably checked out a while ago. So if
Yeah,
you're
we
still with
probably
us,
lost you.
yeah. So
You probably didn't click Sir Francis Drake or not because you probably didn't know what a Francis Drake was. I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm just saying, like,
yeah,
that's not a name that's familiar to a lot of us.
yeah, no, that is true. Okay. Um, I'm just gonna list off some stuff and some quotes, really quickly. He brought a chaplain on his boats. We already mentioned this, Francis Fletcher, and on all his other journeys, he was always mentioned as bringing a preacher on his
Which
boats.
really differentiated him from regular pirates who not only did not bring chaplains on their boat, but oftentimes when they would catch boats with chaplains or things like that, they were well known for mocking them, for giving mock sermons in front of them, for killing them. So it is important to note, like, pirates are not generally nice guys. He's a privateer, but he's unique in that he's keeping a chaplain.
Yeah. So there you have that. He brought a Bible with him always, and he brought another book with him called Fox's Book of Martyrs. You may have heard of this
Great
one
name.
actually. It's still around. It's probably a book that Elise has read, for
Yeah,
her
it's,
Martyrs and
it was
Missionaries.
part of the inspiration of Martyrs and Missionaries was like, we need a modern version of that here. At least, yeah, Mark is looking at the sign hanging up here in our studio for Martyrs
Yeah.
and Missionaries, but definitely an important part of what I feel like we do. So yeah, great book,
Yep.
wonderful, love it.
Yeah, so and it was actually in his time, it was a new book. It was just written like somewhere after the rule of Bloody Mary, and it mentioned like martyrs all the way back from like the start of the church, but also especially had like a whole chapter dedicated to the 300 people that were burned at the stake at that time. So that was
Which I mean,
important.
actually, they lived along contemporarily. John Fox, I thought there one of us had the quote here.
Yeah, there is a
The
quote of him.
the
Yeah,
Lord, it's speaking of him. Fox said, "The Lord has raised up valiant captains, even such as Drake, to scourge the Antichrist and his brood from Spain." And that really gives you a vibe
yeah,
how English people felt about the Spanish Empire at the time.
yeah. Every time someone brings in like they're the Antichrist, they probably not fans.
Yeah.
So it's
Generally
still
speaking, we consider the Antichrist the bad guy, and so when you, call a country the Antichrist,
yeah. No, I'm with you on that one. We don't disagree there. Um, there have been reports of him trying to convert Spanish prisoners to Protestantism. They had a mandatory morning prayer on his
Mhm.
boats. And there was like a very strong connection just to what he did to Protestantism. And even like he was part of something that some listeners probably already know, something called the English Sea Dogs. Like there were many more or many more. There were a couple of other guys similar to Francis Drake doing like this state sponsored privateering. And there was like a very clear, like they were all like Calvinist Protestants. And there was a very clear, like, we're out here to fight the Catholics. So that's really what he did. Um, well, here's another quote. In launching attack after attack against Spain, Drake saw his mission as a vanquishing of Spain, the chief promoter of the Antichrist on earth. And I think here the Antichrist, if it refers to a person, it would have been the Pope at that time. Um, and he grew up an ardent Protestant. There's quotes from his from the World Encompassed. We fell down upon our knees, giving thanks to the Almighty God, who had delivered us from the fury of our enemies, and by the good hand of God upon us, we came safe into our desired harbor. There's just a lot of quotes here, and now I just want to read a couple of other quotes because there is two sides to this story. Most of the quotes that we just read to you right now are like from the 1600s, like really close to when Drake was still alive or had just passed away. And it actually makes it hard to find things about like what was it really like what was he living out, was he actively living out his faith or not, because from like the 18 like mid 19th century to now there's actually like a second movement that sort of looked back at Drake and sort of yeah, did another take on the history and said like, yeah, it was actually all these things that we just read, the quotes that we just read, and even some of the the legends about the morning prayer, about those things. It was actually Protestant propaganda from the English to sort of elevate him as a Protestant hero. And so I'm going to quote from a man named Harry Kelsey, who wrote a book called Sir Francis Drake, the Queen's Pirate, in 1998. And he says the legend of Drake as a Protestant champion was born of Elizabethan propaganda and sustained by later nationalist writers. In reality, his motives were commercial and political, not crusading. And later on in his book, he writes Drake was no Puritan zealot. Religion served as convenient rhetoric for actions driven by profit, adventure, and loyalty to his sovereign. And there's a couple more quotes like this, and yeah, we've gone through the story. You've heard all the things that he did. We went through the whole episode with Francis Fletcher, with the preacher on the boat, and now we sort of need to come to a conclusion. Troy, like, where do we go? Like, what do we think?
All right, let's get the final verdict here.
Let's go. Our final verdict. Francis Drake, was he a Christian or not? Shall I take a first go
Take the
here?
lead. You definitely should take the lead.
I I think it's really tough. I think it's tough, and I struggle with it, um, because we said this before, and we're gonna be saying this in many episodes. you got to look at it within his time frame, like within the time period that he was living in. Whether it was true or not, there was Catholic persecutions happening. Whether it was true, it happened to his family specifically, we don't know. But there was definitely Catholic persecutions happening. He was born in 1540. Bloody Mary is like I think like 4 or 5 years after that, or even a little bit later. So he would have known of these things. He had Fox's Book of Martyrs, so he was well aware of like this Catholic Protestant conflict. So within that frame, yeah, I mean, I don't I don't condone violence, but I can try and understand some of it, but like just just take the 10 commandments. Like it's just like he's not like he's stealing, he's murdering people maybe, or even like the Rathlin massacre. Like we know for sure he's been at least implicit of murder. Like he's been there. He's at least like an accessory to the crime. So like those things, I see those things. I'm like, yeah, I mean, and I struggle with it. Like slave trade, yes, absolutely bad. But in their days, like, yeah, I mean, I don't like you said as well. Like we don't want to like try to make it sound good, or like, oh no, it wasn't that bad. No, it was very bad. Obviously, all the things that happened, a lot of bad things, and I just struggle with this um religiously inspired violence. And I've actually just listened to your episode on the Knights Templars, where you also do like this whole part of like the warrior monks. Very interesting. If you have time, listen to it. Revive Thoughts, deep dive on the Knights Templar, part two coming somewhere soon. Um, because I know I've heard from a good source that it's been recorded. Um, and I just struggle with that religious violence, and maybe that's my culture. That's what I grew up with. Like right now, like yeah, we don't go out and crusade anymore. We don't go out and fight the Catholics anymore.
You don't?
Not no.
Not even once? Not even one solid Armada burning? You haven't done that?
Not recently, and I don't have any planned for now. So that's where I struggle with this. That's where I'm like, okay, he brings Bibles. He has the mandatory prayer. Like okay, there is this reframing of it was just all propaganda. I just can't have an opinion on it. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know what it was. If those things were true, if he was reading his Bible, if he was doing the morning prayers, for me, I just can't match that with then burning Catholic churches, taking their gold, fighting Catholics, even if they were evil. Like you just said, like even if the Catholics were evil, like I just can't wrap my mind
Let
around.
me ask, put it in a different context. Like we don't, we're having trouble. Like let's use the context everyone always uses, and we use the Nazis and the Americans or something like that.
Mm,
Are you saying that if there was, churches to Hitler, and the American Christians come in and they burn some of those down and steal money from the Nazis in that type of wartime moments and stuff like that, do you really think like anybody would sit there and go, "Wow, I don't know, that's stealing," right? Like everyone knows that that would be
yeah,
seen as acceptable. Well, in the mind of the Christian in England, that's the Spanish Empire. They are an antichrist institution. All of their preachers are telling them that. They are inquisitioning people and killing them all around the world. If you try to be Protestant in Spain and see how far it gets, you know what I'm saying? Like it's a difficult thing to do.
yeah.
You're just matching their energy back. If you met a guy, and there aren't as many of these around anymore. So, but you meet a guy who's served in that kind of combat, and he tells you about his secret missions where they took down supply caravans and rerouted the supplies away to their side and not their side. We would just look at that, I think, and just sit there and go, "Wow, like what an amazing soldier of war." And I don't know that we would question whether or not that made him no longer a Christian or not. I mean, am I wrong though? Like I feel like the biggest part of it is that it's a religious war. But even if we say, okay, eh, eh, even if we would say, hey, I don't maybe think all of these guys, this, that, and the other, but from his world, all of his preachers and teachers have told him that the Pope is Antichrist and these people are evil. He
Yeah.
doesn't know anything else. So does this disqualify his Christianity then if he's living under what he's been trained and taught?
That is a very good point. And And I think for me, this is sort of like a cultural and chronological clash. Like
Yeah.
you had that quote from C.S. Lewis,
Yeah.
right? Like I think that applies again here. You can quote it again. I forgot what it was,
It's
but
chronological snobbery, like, basically,
oh
we
yeah, that's it. Yeah,
we who live in I'm not I'm this is me paraphrasing for sure because I definitely am not getting this quote necessarily correct right now, but the phrase chronological snobbery is his, but it's just basically saying we who live in the future will have just such a tendency to look down on those who live in the
yeah,
past, and I definitely think we do. I definitely think we do. Um, we have to be very careful then because we don't wanna look at Sir Francis Drake and go, "He's so dumb. Look at him burning churches. I would never do something like that." But forgetting that we often celebrate, the people who do many things in our war days that would be considered, in their minds, just as violent as what he's doing with his little galley ship.
yeah, yeah. That is true. So it's like I said, I still struggle with this because I even wrote this down. Like I feel like I can see how, from his point of view, he is a Christian. Like I'm no doubt about that. He's doing the right thing. He's defending the Protestant beliefs. But I just feel there is such a clear undercurrent of like greed and
Mm.
opportunism. Like, and that's where I struggle. Like, even when you look at like him just taking all the gold and all everything, and um, well, maybe a counter question then. I really understand your point, but like biblically, would you be able to throw me a good quote or a passage that says like, okay, wait, there is like the circumstances of war, it's okay to steal, and like I'm not doing this to be like oh well, just but only if you show the Bible that it's true. Like I really want to understand your point, but I'm still sort of trying to wrap my head around it. So
Sure.
would you have anything for me that would help me, like an example from the Bible, like, hey, look at this, like something like this? Maybe I'm putting you on the spot here.
No, you're not, but it's more just like, I mean, there are very little biblical commands on warfare in general, right? You know
That's
what I'm
true.
saying?
Yeah.
Like, we don't have a lot, like, yes, obviously we have the Old Testament, which is full of battles and fighting. Um, in which case, if you're talking about using David or someone like that as an example of good generalship, absolutely we could see slaughters and things like that. It can be considered great warfare. I think the average person who's a Christian though is not looking necessarily for destruction of the Canaanite kind of
Yeah.
passages. We're looking for passages that say, okay, how should warfare be commanded today? But there are almost next to no passages on that, right? Like I can't think of any passages that talk about that. That's not what the New Testament focuses on the person of Christ. So then we have to look at, okay, well, what are the principles and the ideas from Scripture? I don't get the impression that the idea from Scripture is war and soldiers can never be fought. I don't I don't see when Paul says be a good soldier for the Lord, he's commending the idea, for example, of a soldier being an honorable position at times, something that he expects that will be around for a long time, that we can use this imagery of the soldier. So then if we're looking at the idea that like soldiers can fight for their homeland, from the perspective of Francis Drake, isn't he only attacking the Spanish to defeat this group of people that is wreaking havoc across the world, and he's attacking them. He is taking their gold, but it's to weaken the Spanish, and he's bringing it back to England. He's handing it all back over to his government. The government does give him some of that gold back, but it's like his salary. Like he's like, here, I caught, I think it was something like 240,000 pounds worth of silver when he went and did that battle off the coast of California. He could have bought America for that amount of money. And instead, he goes over, gives it to the queen, and I believe he gets back 10,000. Now, that's the equivalent of 5 million US dollars. He got paid well, but certainly he could have had a lot more
Yeah.
money. Now, did some of him and the soldiers squirrel some extra money here and there away? Of course it's possible.
Yeah.
But I guess my thought is if he's in it for the greed, he could have made a lot more money without having to go back and hand it back to Queen Elizabeth. But giving it back to Queen Elizabeth makes me think that there was more to it than purely greed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. You've convinced me on that part. I'm still, I mean, it's just so foreign to me.
It
The
is.
idea like
And look,
even seeing the Catholics as such a clear antichrist, and we
yeah,
have to, be fighting them. But counterpoint, the Catholics were doing the same. Like they were building
yeah,
an armada. They were like, we gotta make England Catholic again. And we both know, like I've listened to your London Fire episode, Catholics are around every corner
yeah.
at that point trying to make England Catholic again. This is roughly like 80 years later. It's still happening. Like it's still happening. So yeah, maybe in a way, like we do owe a bit of a debt to a guy like Sir Francis Drake for, like you already said, keeping England Protestant. Like it would have been very hard for the Dutch, like a very young Protestant nation,
Yeah,
to prosper as well as they did.
I
If
agree.
England was Catholic as well, they would pretty much be alone. Them and some parts of Germany, maybe.
I don't think we
Uh,
can even fully like conceive how different the world would be if that Spanish Armada had landed and had any kind of realistic success in England. I mean, that would mean as America was colonized, that's being colonized by maybe theoretically a Catholic or partially Catholic country. I mean, like you said, the Netherlands now loses its one of its biggest Protestant supporters. Canada, Australia, South Africa. I mean, the whole
yeah,
world map might look very different and very much more
yeah,
Catholic if that armada had landed in England. And it really seems hard to say that it wasn't Sir Francis Drake who didn't if you're going to give the responsibility to any one person, he's the guy who stopped it from taking off the first time, that threw the giant wrench into the plans. With that said, I do agree with you. So my verdict kind of lands similar to yours, but I think I'm more positive. And my verdict is it's hard to tell because I'm not necessarily like a lot of the deconstructors and people who come back 200 years later and go, those people who lived 200 years ago, I think it's all propaganda. Well, how would you know?
yeah.
You have no more
Very
evidence
true.
to your case
Yeah.
than these people at least lived there. They're eyewitnesses. Now, do I think the guy smiled, hugged, cried, and was like, "Chop here, friend"? I don't. You know what? That does seem like an embellishment. I'm willing to say that maybe the Francis Drake's nephew was maybe, I hope, surprisingly exaggerating the story. I wouldn't be surprised. But the people who come along later saying, "Oh, that's Protestant propaganda," you're living in 1998. Unless you have some documents that we didn't have access to that says Queen Elizabeth often encouraged embellishing stories to promote the Protestant cause, you have no evidence of that. You just don't. And you can't come along and just say, sorry, he never had Devos and carried the Fox's Book of Martyrs because we decided he didn't. You don't have
Yeah.
you have no proof. In fact, you have negative proof because these people lived at the time and you did not. So I'm going to take the words of eyewitnesses more seriously than I am going to take the words of people who are just negative deconstructors anyway. With that said, right, the massacre's bad.
No.
Um, he's a rough guy. Would I want to sail with him? No, because I'd
No.
be like, "Hey, where are we going? Don't worry, we're going to Japan. Cool. Why are we in Antarctica?" Like, I mean, so like the guy is not honest. Um,
Yeah.
he's rough, but does it take that kind of roughness to be the kind of pirate that sails up and down the coast of California for a year and does that kind of thing? Probably. I think he is very sincere, at least if the accounts are true and the deconstructors aren't correct, it's not propaganda. I think he's very sincere. I also think he's sincerely confused in some ways, but I don't see him as a pirate necessarily. I see him as a soldier whose mission is to weaken Spain. And so from that perspective, a lot of things that we wouldn't necessarily want an average person to do, we would expect a soldier to do. And so I go a lot of and also, as far as we can tell, he didn't massacre California or the Mexican cities. Like he was alone. He could have killed and slaughtered everybody. It doesn't seem like he did. Because when the chaplain complains about him, he puts the murder of the Thomas Doughty guy on it from 2 years before. He doesn't say, "Oh, and also the thousands of people we slaughtered that were under these Spanish lands." You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't seem to even like, that doesn't seem to be a thing, so it seems like Francis Drake was kind of on his best behavior while he robbed other ships. So I think that not that if he was at our church today, the pastor would need to have a talk with this guy,
Yes.
but I'm willing to
Yeah.
say I'm cautiously optimistic that I think he might have been a Christian.
And I will agree with you then. In
Hey,
the end, I do agree. I still struggle with some of these parts, but just, not to be a chronological snob,
so there you go.
uh, I do think within the context, I think, could he have done better? Could he have been a clearer Christian? Yes, obviously. Like if we had like, oh, here's like
He
a
did
book of
terrible
devotionals
he
written
did
by Francis
terrible with
Drake.
those, natives that were bowing to him, like,
Yeah,
so
he
that was
was.
not his best. He's not a good missionary for sure.
Yeah, no. Like there could have been moments where he could have made it easier on us right now on
Yeah.
this podcast, hundreds of years later, to say like, oh yeah, obviously he's a Christian. But I think there's a lot to learn here. Like there's a lot here, like in here, like that, or to learn to make you think. Like, yeah, how do we deal with these kinds of things and these kinds of histories, like with Protestants and Catholics fighting each other over and over? And I bet there's going to be more episodes where you feature some people that are like in similar conflicts or different times, maybe, but similar things. Where yeah, this is a different time. This is a different era, and yeah. So there you have it.
Very difficult.
Very difficult. And like we said, we would love to hear your comments on
Yeah.
this. If you made it to the end with us, thank you so much for listening to this. And Sir Francis Drake, Christian or not, tell us in the comments.
Yeah,
We would love to hear from you.
I'm looking forward to hearing if you agree or if you think we're wrong. What do you think? Obviously, he lived an amazing, fascinating, very unique life. Obviously, he has some very not great moments and dark moments in that life. But I'm be curious if you agree with us on cautiously optimistic for Sir Francis Drake, or if you're gonna sit here and go like, I here's exactly why I think you guys are way off base. We want to hear from you because we don't think we have all the answers. We know that God ultimately knows, but also by talking and sharing, we can all learn a little bit more and grow together in that way, and hopefully sharpen our own faith by these discussions. So, this is Troy.
And my name is Mark, and this was Christian or Not.